Do that again. Show that.
Don't do
Are
it.
we gonna have to
Yeah, come on.
we have to restart?
That's amazing.
That's for my personal use.
And welcome to the Slowtwitch podcast. We are joined, as most of the time, with Ryan Heisler. And we also have a really fun addition to the podcast today, who is joined our team, not just from the podcast perspective, but from a sales perspective. Ryan, would you like to introduce our guest today?
Yeah. It's super interesting because Brad and I we both started in triathlon at the same time, and so it's cool to have somebody else who is
Brad who?
joining on. So we've got Brad Williams as the newest
Yes.
member of the Slowtwitch team. So first, welcome, Brad.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It's good to be a part of a team that I've been a fanboy of, I guess, for going on 15 years now.
Well, we've all been fanboys of what Dan started, let's be honest. That's why we're here.
So really quickly before we jump into like the weekend that was, Brad, kind of we talked offline a little bit. Just can you talk about how Slowtwitch in general has kind of impacted your career in endurance sports? And like, I'm sure a lot of people don't know that you've been around for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I started in triathlon in 2008 with a sprint triathlon, which to Eric's point, I didn't jump straight to Ironman. Started with a sprint triathlon on a military base in Korea. And I found out about Slowtwitch, I think, from a guy that was there named Eric Reed, who was in the Army. And he informed me about Slowtwitch and kind of mentored me through the sport in the early years. And kind of just raced my way into shape over a couple of years. And in those couple of years, Slowtwitch was instrumental in that, I guess. I had a lot of free time in front of a computer screen at work just to the job I was in, and found the bottom of the forum pretty much every day, and would come back the next day to read more. And then, of course, a lot of insightful articles.
Are you still trying to race yourself into shape?
Yeah, I'm back to that place of I stopped racing back in 2020, and now I'm trying to live an active and healthy lifestyle, my way back into shape, I guess you could say.
You had a pretty quick, but I would say it was a successful little like stint as a professional athlete, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I always look back on, and there isn't really a way to measure how somebody's professional career was successful. I think there's many ways that you can do that. Monetarily, results based, if you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. And I set out on the pro adventure and journey wanting to line up and race the best people in the world at every race that I went to. And when I look back at that, I was able to do that. And I found some success along the way, I would say. Monetarily, it's a different story. I was always working a part-time job because the level I was racing at wasn't paying all of the bills. And honestly, I think I needed to keep my mind busy. So I did a few things along the way and kind of found my way to where I am today.
I was always impressed by you as a professional athlete before I even knew you personally. I I always appreciated your approach to your sponsorships that you had and the ongoing message that you tended to spread um, when you were a pro of just trying to get the best out of yourself and the people around you. Um, just food for thought, man. Like,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of people that had a perception that maybe I was trying to shill out product, but I would never take a deal that I had never used or believed in the product. And that deal may have started as a discount. And I mean, I was fortunate to have served in the military and to have been able to kind of use the military discount as a way to get in with a brand. And so if they didn't have a discount out there, I would just inquire and see if they had a military discount. And that's how I got in with ISM. And Dave kind of took me under his wing from there and was able to go from just getting a discount off of saddles to free saddles to then being on bonus structure. I mean, if you can grow an organic partnership with a company and show them that you can bring value, I think you can work your way into some pretty good deals. And sometimes that means taking a little less at the beginning to build something more fruitful down the road. And I was able to do that with a few companies, and it was good.
Which, generally speaking, is our approach at Slowtwitch when it comes to partners, which is why you're probably a really good fit for what you're doing now.
Yeah, no, I mean it's you got to start somewhere, and we got to prove as Slowtwitch why you would want to partner with us. And if you give us a chance, I think we can show why we're in this space and why Dan's been so successful in this space and all the things that we can do for brands. There's more than just the forum, and I think that's something that a lot of people lose sight of. There is a whole website that we talk about articles on. There's the whole fit database. There's so much that you guys have done over the years to build it to where it is.
Maybe that should be a new shirt more than just the form. I like that.
I thought we
That
had
that
a
would be.
slime shirt in the works, but
Yeah,
I think more than just a forum, that could be a thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
that's a good Kona shirt.
Kona 2023 coming up,
Yeah,
man. I got time.
the
We got time.
the the thank God I'm not racing party shirt. We can wear that there.
Dang straight.
it
Ryan, should we dive into the weekend? It was a big weekend in sport of triathlon, man.
was a
Brad, you were
huge
there.
weekend, and Brad was on site. Ironman World Championships Part One. Kind of weird to say that, this being 2023 and the first year of the split venue. Um, but I mean, at least from what we were able to cover to date, right? Like you had a really incredible professional race with a lot of big stories and Sam Laidlow taking his first world championship. Um, and just it was it was fun to cover from my own perspective simply because um, the race dynamics were so different than what you would see out of your typical race in Kona, right? And I mean, some of that is a testament to the way that Sam races, um, where it's pretty much he's full gas from the gun. But I think that course in Nice, particularly the bike and the way that you have to climb for the first 40 or so miles, um, really lent itself to creating kind of this really strange dynamic where you had massive time gaps between groups and everything else. And so um, it's just it was fun. It was different. And from what I was able to cover on my end of things, like it felt very worthy of the title World Championship. Even though, as we talked about last week, like it didn't feel that big in the lead up to it, at least from afar.
Why do you think that is, Brian? We had some discussion about that the other week on the podcast. We had our ideas and
I mean, I
theories there.
like coming off of the backside of it now, right? I think the two biggest things were one, it being the first year of the split, and so none of us um kind of had the expectation of this date on the calendar, and so it felt off timing wise from when you would expect a lot of these stories about worlds to be happening. And secondly, I do think um there is a little bit of truth to, because we aren't um because we're based in the United States, we had a little bit of a loss of the industry side of the equation because most brands and their activations um, on site were really kind of the Europe or EMEA teams. And so those are contacts that we may not necessarily have. Um, and so from an industry side, we're slightly unplugged from it. But
I noticed
when
that a lot of companies in the industry too were split in the regards of it was like half their team based out of the United States were in Nice, and the other half were back at the office, like doing things. Where in the past, generally speaking, like the
It's
whole office
everybody.
shuts down and goes to to the big island. Brad, you were there because this was the feeling that we got leading into the race, and then when we watched the race, we were like, holy shit, this is huge. Like, this is a huge production. This is The city is completely, you know um, accepted this race as their own. Brad, what were your thoughts and feelings being there present? Was it just as big as Kona? Was it bigger? Was it smaller? What do you
Yeah, I
think?
mean, it's just backing up to the media piece. What I'll say is when I go to races, I'm just so busy I don't have time to stay on top of the media. So it's good to kind of have that perspective. Because when I'm sat back at home leading into a race, I'm in my normal routine on social media and I can see all the articles coming out and kind of stay on top of things. I feel like when I'm at the event, I lose sight of everything that's going on, and you just start hearing about things kind of rumor mill at the event, and then you have to go find it online. So, but at the event, the biggest thing that I will say, and it's not anything against Kona, but when we go to Kona, I mean, I think backing up so everybody has perspective, I've been fortunate to be in Kona 5 times. Um, 2014 was my last time as an athlete, and then I had a 9 year gap and went again in last year 2022 for the 2 day event. So I've seen it now as a spectator, and spectating 2 Ironmans in a 3 day period is really hard, but it was really fun last year. And then as an athlete, so I think I have a decent understanding of Kona. A little bit of gap in my time there as an athlete, but I don't really think anything has changed. A lot of it was the same last year when I was there. But Kona gets taken over by triathlon. It has that small town vibe. It is a small town, and when it's race week in Kona, it is triathlon. And I think I want to say it's the race week or the just a few days on the other side of a week out that a cruise ship comes in, and so you get that tourist vibe for that day. That there's people there that don't know the race is going on, and then that cruise ship leaves, and then it's really you may find 1 or 2 people over your week there that are like, oh, what's going on? Otherwise, everybody's there for an athlete or for the industry, or they're an athlete themselves. Nice, on the other hand, is a massive city, and triathlon is just there, and the city absorbs it. And they had the rugby going on, they had a lot of tourists there, and so you would walk down the promenade, and it's not like Kona. If you wanted to talk to somebody about triathlon, you could walk a half a mile and maybe not see anybody that you knew. In Kona, I feel like you can walk 100 meters and you run into the next person. And so your 5 minute walk may turn into a 20-minute walk, where Nice, there's a lot of other things going on. And so you're not just seeing triathletes everywhere. So yeah, Nice did a really good job of absorbing it and bringing it in, but they did a really good job of welcoming the people in. And I thought it was a great race.
And
The
one of the
spectator crowds looked way bigger than it kind of looked like that whole run course was as popular as Ali'i Drive was.
Yeah, I mean, for parts of it, I mean what was cool is that instead of it just being a lead to the big tree, I feel like is like that first turn as you're coming back down into town to the finish line from that right turn in, or really from the top of a lead down the hill and then down to through the kind of S snake and then the right turn to come down the final stretch. That's always like the big section in Kona. And I mean, out along the water edge in the first 5 mile out and back section is as well. And it was very similar there. That main section of road going out, probably out to 4K, maybe 3K. I feel like as you got to the further turnaround section, it was a little bit less populated. I had ridden out there a few times throughout the race and chasing the pros around and trying to stay up to date with what was going on. But yeah, there was a lot of fans, and I think it comes down to when you look at the geography of things, it's really easy to get to Nice. There's direct flights from the East Coast. It's an easy hop over from the UK, and then it's on mainland Europe. I mean, it's easy for a lot of people drove there. A lot of people drove there or a few people I know drove there from the UK. Um, I know Fenella Language's husband was trying to get a last minute flight in from, I believe they're out in Lanzarote, training for Kona, and he was like really feeling it like he was missing out, and he was going to come in on Friday before the race and leave again on Sunday. So there was people wanting to be there, and it was easily accessible. So I think that's probably why we saw a really big crowd there.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that specific case of FOMO, right? Where, um, you know, I think we're seeing that come up on our forum a fair bit too, out of some people who had the opportunity, they had qualified for the race and they made the decision, oh, I don't want to go to Nice. Like, I'm going to wait a year and try to qualify again because Kona was the thing that they know, right? And now we're starting to see more of the stories of, you know what, like that was a mistake. Like this was a destination that we should really consider and be going to. Um, Looking at it from afar, you know, the course was really well spectated. I know that sometimes access points to get across certain bridges or anything else can always be problematic. Like, it's just unfortunately, there was a terror attack in Nice 7 years ago, right? So, like, there's heightened security in certain places and it can make things a little complicated. Um, but just overall spectator friendliness, um, really kind of epic. How was, like other kind of logistics, right? Like getting food, getting, around town, because, as you say, like because Kona completely gets taken over, and sometimes like there's frankly too many people there.
Yeah, I mean, backing up to the people that had FOMO, like 100%, I think they missed out on a great opportunity to experience an amazing event. I always have a rule for my athletes that qualify for Kona is like the first year you go to an event for a World Championship event, I think you should do everything. Go to every expo thing you want to go to all the parties, go to all the brand stuff, go to the Parade of Nations, the welcome party, go to the after the this awards ceremony. And then I think if you're lucky enough to go back again, then like focus on doing the race because Kona's always been one of those that's like get to experience all of that and be fortunate for being there. And I think everything's worth experiencing. And same for Nice. Like we don't know. Nice is on a 4-year agreement, so whoever feels like they missed out this year, they should have an option to go back. But I mean, those that didn't go, yeah, I think it was a big loss there. I would definitely recommend like if you get the chance to go back and what would it be 25 for the men,
Yep.
they'll be back there. So if they have a chance to go back in 25, I think if it's in your budget, like definitely spend the money. Uh, as far as food and all of that, there's great amount of food, great food. It was endless. I mean, we found an amazing pizza place in the alley, uh, and it was on I think our first night there, and it was amazing pizza. But the funny thing is, it was cash only, and the my business partner or my colleague that I was with, neither one of us had 20 euros on us to get a few slices of pizza. For 450 euro, you got a fresh slice of pizza. And he wandered away to go find an ATM, and I held my place in line. And he comes back pretty quick with 20 euro. And I was like, man, like, why did you only get 20 euro? We maybe wanted more than just like a few slices of pizza. And he's like, no, no, you're not going to believe it. I was asking directions to where an ATM was, and these tourists that were in town, they just gave me 20 euro because they felt bad I was going to have to walk so far to get pizza.
That's
So
awesome.
then he comes back with a 20 euro, and we were struggling to tell the pizza guy that we wanted to buy half of a pizza because they were selling by slice, and he didn't quite understand. And this ended up being a French Canadian girl was standing there, and she ended up translating for us, and she ended up not having any cash, so we ended up buying 4 pieces of pizza, and we got 3 of them, and she got one, and we did some bartering for translation for pizza, and we ended up having dinner for free on a very nice tourist. So yeah, but there was
Awesome.
other places that were really good. All the kind of off the prom was there's like an alleyway back. We were staying a few K down from the start, kind of towards the I Love Nice sign, and there's a big open area for restaurants and stuff back through there, and that was packed every night with more so tourists than triathletes, but there was lots of options for food. Everybody was going on and on about great food, and I think Jay Pershin from Quintana Roo spoke about that in the forum, and I think he threw me under the bus because after the race night, we wanted to go out to the race was still going on, and we were kind of in a gap period of time that we had some time, and he wanted to go grab dinner, and I was like, well, we both had access to the VIP area, and I was like, there's free food down at the VIP area, and I had already bought him lunch once, and I told him that Eric keeps me on a really tight budget and I couldn't afford 2 meals. So I convinced him to go down to the VIP area, which there's always typically good food. And I thought it was great, but he didn't like that it was fried calamari and beef sliders and there was fresh beer on the table for him. Like, I don't know what it's going to take to please him, but
Mountain
supposedly I
Dew,
just needed,
Mountain Dew,
yeah,
Brad,
Yeah.
Mountain Dew.
supposedly I just needed to
That's
take him to like an authentic Nice restaurant.
I know, man.
But
I'm telling you,
it
Mountain Dew.
was
Just show up to Mountain Dew and just give it to Jay. He's fine.
Yeah, it was right on the ocean. We sat there. There was a lot of people down there. There was somebody, one of Sam Laidlow's sponsors, had bought him a couple bottles of champagne, and their whole group was down there. Jan showed up and was taking pictures with his triathlon suit from the day. There was just a lot of different things going on down there. It was cool to see. I mean, outside of Sam's big win, it was also Jan's last dance, and
Yeah.
I think that the fans did a really good job of making that special. Unfortunately, it didn't, I think, go the way that a lot of us thought it would, but he went out there on a tough day and still got across the line, which was good to see.
Brad, tell us about the expo and stuff that was going on there. A lot of people. I'm very curious to see what that was like because
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a little nervous about Kona this year after talking to a lot of the industry partners and people not going or not choosing to expo.
I typically walk through an expo 2 to 3 to 4 times when I'm at an event. Just you see a lot of people, it's a good place to network. I didn't get back down to I went to the expo once on the morning we arrived. We arrived Tuesday night, sorry, the next morning, so Wednesday morning. I made one pass through there, talked to the people that I knew, and met some new people. Um, it was just a little bit away from where everything else was. Like it was away from our house, so that's probably one of the reasons that I didn't go. In Kona, where we normally stay, I have to go by the expo to get to the pier, so I stop in more frequently. It wasn't far out of the way. We're talking 2 or 3K from the house. It wasn't like it was miles and miles away. And on first pass, I mean, all the key brands were there that I would have expected to be there. Some of them were there with their European distributors instead of with the heads of the brands or the normal people you would see, which wasn't surprising. I would hope those brands that were there with their European distributors will see the main people in Kona maybe, and maybe that's how they decided to split it up into to financially make it work for them as a brand. But yeah, it was. I wouldn't say it was any different than it was similar to St. George. It was no different than any big Ironman I've been to in the last couple of years. I think the expo space has changed a little bit. I think some of them are a little bit smaller now, but I've only been at championship level events in the last couple of years, so I think it's hard for me to have perception on that. But yeah, all the big brands were there.
So it
Hoka
wasn't
had
it wasn't a bust.
no, and it was the
That's
first
good.
time I'd ever seen that Hoka was doing custom embroidery on shoes. I think that was the one thing that stood out
Really?
one thing that stood out to me. They had a whole trailer set up, and the reason it stood out to me, really, what caught my eye was Leon Chevalier was on the big poster behind with a big precision hat on, precision fill and hydration hat, and that's what caught my eye. And then I saw what was going on, and they were custom embroidering shoes. So it's yeah, it's something I guess they're doing now.
Wow, that's cool. Did you get a pair?
I do not have a pair of Hoka shoes yet, but I think there might be a set on the way. I'm tired of walking around Ironman events now with another brand on that's very prevalent but is not heavily involved in triathlon, and so I feel like I should either be in a pair of Ons or a pair of Hokas. I mean, that's who we see right now in our industry. I feel like at events and promoting athletes in a very big way.
Mm-hmm. What shoe do you walk around in currently?
I've been in Nikes, and the only
Yeah.
thing is that I just keep using the ones that were in my closet from when I stopped racing, and I'm almost out of those few pairs, and the grips on those are deteriorating quickly. I still get some crap for walking around in Nikes with carbon plates, but I mean that's just I'm not a big tennis shoe guy
You got to do it.
or a running shoe guy. I'm normally in flip flops.
You need your carbon shoes if you're going to be working media. They help.
Hey, I, I didn't sign up for a media role, just to be clear. I
If
think
you're going to be
I'm doing
running around,
sales.
they help. So ultimately, the big question, right? Did it feel like a world championship on site?
100%. I think what a lot of people are having a hard time with is their experience and vision is that what Kona is. And I think if you disconnect from that and you bring somebody outside of triathlon or somebody new to triathlon and only show them Nice, I think they would be impressed. And I think they would walk away going, wow, that was a world championship level event. We got to stand in one place and we got to see the pros on the run course 8 times. I think that goes a long ways. There was big crowds. It had it all and amazing views.
Yeah, no. I mean, I love watching European-based Ironman and even Roth, right? Like places that offer not just a multi-loop run, but a run that's so incredibly well supported, right? Because that's just not an experience that you typically get outside of Kona um, in North America, right? Like you don't get the same level of experience, and so, I mean, I for one, like when I'm looking at my own personal racing schedule and what I might want to do, I had totally written off next year as like my last go round trying to do a full Ironman, and I'm like, maybe I want to hold on to that dream for one more year, just because of the way that Nice looked. Like that's a place that I want to go.
Are you saying you're going to try to qualify for Nice, Ryan?
I say that I might have a 2-year plan in the back of my head, assuming
How
that
many
I can get healthy. That'd be a good start.
how many Ironmans have you done?
My batting average is pretty terrible, but I've started 5.
Oh, I was wondering if we could maybe like work a backdoor play to get you to be the first legacy athlete to Nice.
No,
Maybe we could start playing that option.
no,
Well, you have 2 years. You can do five
no.
Ironmans in 2 years, and then we get you a legacy slot to Nice.
Somehow, someone has to write for the site. Brad,
How many have you finished?
is that to me?
Yeah. Yeah. How many you
One,
finished?
one. I got hit by a car during one. I had the I didn't finish one where I was working at the Expo for 40 something plus hours leading up into the race. So I got done with the bike and went, this is stupid. Um, and then, yeah, so I've started 4 then. Because I was training for one. That's when I broke my back and had my brain injury. And then my DNF in 2019 is because of my head. And we finally, now have that all figured out. So that's why I'm trying to come back. And then I do stuff like break my wrist while walking through an expo.
Brad, how many Ironmans have you done?
I believe I've done 14, and I finished 13. So that was that was my only DNF, I think. So yeah, pneumonia going into an Ironman is not necessarily the best way to taper, and it's not the best way to race on antibiotics. So
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
So, Brad, you had like your first experience with media and being a little bit closer to the pros than I think you have outside of racing. Talk to us a little bit about that experience because you kind of were able to go wherever you wanted to go and talk to whoever you wanted to go. And you always had like these really fun, cool stories that you were talking about as you were like downloading your day to us before you went to bed. And I had FOMO listening to it, but tell us about that a little bit because that was fascinating to me to like listen to you talk about the things that you had like run into that day.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a little bit of close access just since I manage our sponsored athletes over at Precision Fuel and Hydration. I'm able to, with Ironman, they've allowed me to get some access, but it wasn't to the full extent of having a rep bib and having that media bib. And that thing's powerful. When somebody starts telling you no and then they see the red bib, they're like, oh no, no, you are allowed. So me and Mark Threefall rode out to 15K on the bike course. We watched the swim start. They got about halfway through it and then we headed out. And we were able to get all the way out there. And backing up to Ryan's point about the terrorist stuff and the closure of the courses and all of that, I've raced 14 Ironmans, I think about 50, 70.3s over my career. And there's only one other location in the world that I've seen a course as well managed as this, and that was China.
I was
And
about to
in
say.
China, there was barriers for the whole, or barriers railing for the whole 90K of the bike course, and there was military. I would say about every 5 to 10 feet, there was a military soldier along the whole entire bike course. There was not that many military and police officers in Nice, but what they did differently than I've ever seen at any other course is at every roundabout or any intersection in that first 15K section that I rode, you would see dump trucks or big vehicles blocking the road that any car could possibly get into the course. And that is something that I have never seen outside of China's barrier situation, which was eye-opening to me, and then this situation. And I think you have to give massive kudos to seeing them do it that way. It was
France,
well
man,
done.
they're used
Yeah,
to it. They're used to it with the tour.
yeah. I mean, and granted, I only did the first 15K there, but that was my experience there. Um, yeah, so the cool things was me and Three Fall rode out to that 15K mark and watched them come up that hill, and that was really quick though. I mean, it was, I think the biggest gap was out of the swim, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was, yeah, there was somebody that was 12 minutes down, but for the most part, we saw all of them come through in 7 minutes,
Yeah.
and that happened really quick, and it was in some little groups and big groups, and that was one of the cool things during the day. Um, and back to the media access part, I feel like I've been around long enough now that when I walk up to somebody, if I'm going to ask them a question, it was awkward because likely they didn't know that I was at Slowtwitch, and so I got tired of having to say like, I just need you to know I'm at Slowtwitch, so you can decline to comment or you can tell me this is off the record, and I won't tell anybody about it. And I think I don't have a journalist background, Ryan, but I know you're educated in this and way more experienced. Was I doing that right, or should I have been doing something else?
I mean, so for the most part, right? Like if you're just having a quick conversation with somebody about something, like it, you know, it's if your intent is to say I'm going to be writing something or I'm going to be reporting on something, lead with that, and then otherwise just treat it as a conversation between yourself and whomever's working, right?
Yeah,
Um, you know, example when I was talking to um, Joe Skipper and Cody Beals after Lake Placid this year. Because it was like, hey, you guys just finished. Like, I don't want to, like, I'm fly on a wall right now. You guys just keep talking, like, do whatever. Like, eventually, we'd love to have you on the podcast, but like, I'm not here to quote you to do anything. Like, you guys just finished and you're shattered and you don't want to talk to anyone besides yourselves. Have fun. Like, do whatever.
I think we've
Um,
always been a little different in that regards, where I think we generally lead with the fact that things are going to be just personal, and
yeah,
unless
yeah. And
we,
so that's where,
you know what I mean? Like I always assume that everything's going to be quote unquote off the record
yeah. So
until
that's where it
unless
was.
unless I'm like, hey, I want to
Yeah,
write about this specifically, like, because that's just not our style of journalism. Like we're not into we're not into the drama of it. We're not into the clickbait of it. Like we just that's not what our site primarily is. Where we're community driven, we're product review driven, and then we have a forum that does everything else for us. And so we just have a different approach to how we handle things, for good or for bad. That's just kind of what we do.
and I mean,
so
So
yeah,
it's one of those things where, you know, like let's take a, Ironman PR communications group, right? Like we have a pretty strong relationship with them from a, like if something needs to be reported as news, like they're very good about giving us what we need. Um, and we're able to ask them questions and talk to them and say, like, okay, for the purposes of this story, versus, like there are times where it's like, hey, like I just want to talk to you as a fellow industry person. Like I have no written agenda here, right? Like this isn't a piece that we're working on or something to bring up here. Um and so, like that gives us the opportunity to stay plugged in with what we need to be plugged in with, and then be able to put the level of thought and authenticity behind, like, when we publish something, you know there's a good reason why we're choosing to write about that.
Yeah, so I found it slightly awkward because I didn't always have that red bib on, and I was allowed into the press briefing, which I think anybody was allowed in there. I don't think you had to be invited necessarily. And then there was the pro briefing, which happened just off the back of that. And while I was at the pro briefing, I overheard Jan asking to have a meeting with a technical official after the meeting in private, and I found that as very interesting. And so I wasn't going to go seek out Jan later. It just happened. I ran into him in the hotel and I said, "Hey, I heard this. Would you, on the record, like want to comment on it or anything?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Will you answer any questions?" He said, "Yeah, of course. Like, I'm just going to tell you this. It's not going to be on the bike. And tomorrow, if you see it, you'll know exactly what it is when you see it." And I was like, "Okay, like, thanks for the info. Like, I appreciate it. Have a great race." And Jan's always been the most professional guy in the industry in a lot of ways. And so I walked away with that. And of course, I feel like it's our job once we know something is not our job. Like, I feel it's media's job once they know about something to dig around and see what they can find. Maybe Jan's not going to tell you, but a couple hours or the next day, I was over at Canyon looking at all of Jan's bikes because Canyon had those on display, and Woofy walked me through all the bikes, and I probed him. I just said, "Hey, I've heard there might be something that could possibly be in question. Like, do you mind showing that to me?" And he said, "Well, Jan's backup bike is right here." And so he was kind of playing the game like, "Oh, maybe there is something, maybe there's not something." So like, man, they're keeping it close hold. So then race morning, I saw his manager Felix, and I asked Felix, "Hey, I've heard there might be something. Do you want to show me?" "No, no, I can't comment on it yet. Just wait till the race and you'll see it." Okay, fine. I'll be patient at this point. Eventually it's going to pop up. I'm just walking down to the swim area and I'm standing there on my phone answering some text. I think I was just answering text, and I just happened to look up, not even realizing Jan was warming up down there, and he's sitting down and getting ready, and he looked up and saw me when I looked up, and I just like waved and said like good luck, and then I was getting ready to walk away, and he stood up and came over, and he goes, "All right, Brad, you ready? You ready to see my 10,000 euro prototype of this new product?" Totally in Jan's way, right? And I was like, "Yeah, let me see it." And he pulls out a plastic bag out of his kit, and I was like, "Okay, where's the pro?" It's like, is it the air in the bag or like? So he's totally played me, right? Like, it was really well done, like well played.
Well,
So that the bag is, he's always struggled to get into his kit because it's super tight fitting. He can't swim with it all over his shoulders because it's so tight fitting.
Yep.
So the plastic bag was to slide through his arm sleeve to get it on faster. I didn't ask many more questions. It's race morning. I want to be respectful, so I just said like, "Thanks for showing me." So we have a picture of Jan in the 10,000 euro prototype plastic bag. I think obviously there's some sarcasm in the cost of it, but it was well played by him. So I look back on it. I should have asked like, "Oh, why did you have to ask the technical official?" But I think we look back on all the things that are going on with these aero chess things and all of that, and I think, I don't know if you're allowed to swim with those in. I assume you're not because everybody's struggling with them. So I think they wanted clear guidance on, is this empty plastic bag allowed to be in my swim skin? And when I get out of the water, am I allowed to use it? Or do I have to leave it in transition and mess with it in there? Because he wanted to be doing that all in motion on the way to his bike instead of
right.
having to stop. And as some of us may have seen, his kit had a rip in it. And so I have yet to be able to track down, and I didn't feel like I needed to track down why it ripped, because he's on his farewell tour. I mean, he's out the door. I wanted him to enjoy it. I saw him down there at the VIP area. Didn't think it was the place. Um, I have some ideas of why it happened. It wasn't on a seam in the kit, so I think the plastic may have had a sharp edge, or maybe his fingernail caught the kit or something. But rumor has it he practiced getting in and out of that kit with that same plastic bag and that same kit a lot. and they didn't have any issues and they were confident in using it. So
Ooh, Brad
that
is bringing the conspiracy theories
I
to the
mean,
podcast. I love it.
it's not a conspiracy theory.
no,
It's an
it happened.
educated, it's an
It's get
education thought.
it's gonna turn
um,
into a conspiracy theory.
but
No, they commentated on him having a rip and Braden Curry's zippers being broken.
I'm not talking about
So,
you, man. I'm talking about the people that are gonna start talking about it now because we're
oh,
talking about it.
yeah.
That's yeah.
well, I mean,
It's the
one like,
form. It's the magic of the form.
and sometimes shit happens, right? You
Oh
can
yeah,
practice
for
it all
sure.
you want, but
Yeah.
you're wet. One Jason Kasperzak, who wrote the age groupers perspective for us on
Yeah, where did
Nice.
he come from, by the way, Ryan? That was a really good piece. I
So,
didn't know that that piece was getting written. Then I got on our site and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
so Jason is an age group athlete from Connecticut that I've known for a long time. Um, and he's on the Cupcake Cartel team. And I knew he was going. And when I got COVID and went, shit, how are we going to accomplish some of the stuff we want to be able to accomplish coming into the weekend? I messaged Jason because I knew he was going over and said, like, I know you haven't raced Kona, but you've been to a fair number of world championship events. Like, I'd love to get your perspective on the race and everything leading into it. And he more than graciously said, sure, like, just tell me what you want and, like, give me some parameters on how much content I need to write. And he wrote it on the TGV as he was heading back. um, he had a really good race, but the thing he mentioned, which I was kind of going off of, was just how salty the water is in Nice. And so, like, I know I've had problems in saltwater swims with getting kits on and what they do on your body versus like any other race. And so, you know, the other thing he mentioned in that piece was there weren't showers coming out of the water. And so, like, if you're as salty as you might be coming out of that water, like, stuff's gonna grab on you differently.
They
And
didn't,
it
wow, that's interesting that they wouldn't put. I mean,
just weren't there. Like,
there's showers in Kona, like that's a world championship thing.
I don't remember if there was showers in the swim exit. I didn't spend. I was already out of there by the time the guys were leaving. There was water, a water shower thing on the run course. So
Oh
I
yep,
yeah,
wouldn't
there
be
was
surprised. I
plenty.
wouldn't be surprised if there was. Was there not one at the swim exit?
there wasn't. At least according to Jason, there wasn't.
Okay, well, yeah, he would have ran through it if there was. So
Yeah.
I
Um,
was just listening to audio of what was going on.
And then the other thing that, a couple of people have mentioned is the apparently very classic French thing of not having cool drinks after a certain point in the afternoon. Like, they run out of ice and they run out of stuff that's refrigerated. Um which, like, I think that's one of the things that, this being the first time that you have the world championship there, and the athlete density of when people are going to come through certain points on course and through the run. um, that's something they'll be able to piece together over time, and be able to improve upon.
Talk to us about the vibe, right? Because one of the and you were at Kona last year when there was 2 days, and
Yeah,
there was a very specific vibe difference between the men only race and then the the majority of the women race the second day, right? Like, what was it like when there's no women? Like, there's essentially no goodness. There's just full testosterone, right? Was there a different vibe there being in an event where there's literally no female participants whatsoever? It was just guys.
I mean, Nice was full of tourists.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as noticeable. It honestly, it didn't hit me until we were at the awards ceremony on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and they went to go through all the age groups, and it was going really fast because normally Kona going through the awards is a long, drawn
Right.
out process. And then having a male champion speech and a women's champion speech, it really drags on that awards night. Um, that's when it hit me. It's like, oh, I knew the women weren't here, but it hadn't really affected me. And don't get me wrong, I love supporting women's racing. I mean, we had one male for precision fuel and hydration, and in Nice, we I think have 7 or 8 sponsored women in Kona. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Kona from that aspect. I didn't notice. I guess my mind had already been shifted that this is only going to be a men's race, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't worried about it only being a men's race from the spectating standpoint because I know what's coming in October and that we're going to get to support the women for a whole lead up and a whole day out on the course.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed last year that it was way more tense on the male only day, and then it was very tense at the beginning of the women's only day because they didn't have enough bike mechanics there, and you just didn't have enough support for those women that needed their mechanical stuff done and help with like pumping their tires and things like that. Um, and there was this moment of just pure panic from a lot of them. And then all of a sudden these mama bears jumped in and just started like organizing like where the mechanics were going to go and get over here and do this. And then it just kind of like calmed down after like 20 or 30 minutes inside the transition area that morning. And then it was just like, it was just filled with like non-testosterone. It was just like this peaceful, nice place, and everybody was like cheering each other on. It almost seemed like everyone was racing together instead of individually um, in
Yeah,
Kona on that day.
I will say that that was one of the comments that I can't I don't remember which male pro said it, but he was like, "There's the women provide a lot of content and a lot of like goodness to the content creation side, and that was
Yeah.
missing. They felt like,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, that was that was one of the comments I heard, but I didn't see. I last year in Kona, I missed that. I don't think I was down there near the transition area, but I've seen plenty of women fix their bikes, and I've seen plenty of men who don't know what they're doing. So I don't think it's necessarily that. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
All right. So, Brad, when are you getting to Kona this year? We're going to be there
I'm
the Tuesday before the race starts.
yeah, I'm just trying to survive the next 15 days. For those that don't know, I'm trying to. Oh, I'm not trying. I'm helping a charity bike ride from. I'm starting in Denver and then riding for 3 days to Topeka, Kansas. And I'm going to drive from Topeka to St. Louis and meet back up with the ride in St. Louis and then ride St. Louis to Pittsburgh. 3 days to Indy and then Indy to Pittsburgh in 3 days. And then I'm going to
Is
drive from Pittsburgh to New Jersey. And then we're doing an indoor bike-a-thon for 200 of the company's employees. They'll do 4 30-minute sessions of 50 cyclists at a time.
is this your way of getting ready for the underwear run?
Yeah, no, I told you. I tell everybody to do everything once in Kona, and I've done it once. So
Okay.
that was something. Going back to what maybe was missing is there. I didn't see an underpants run, and the beer mile of triathlon has kind of been taken over by Joe Skipper and the Triathlon Mockery,
Yeah.
and so that's now always done the day after the race.
Mm-hmm.
Where in Kona the beer mile is done the day before the race, and
Yeah.
so that was one change. And then there was Bob Babbitt was in Nice, but there was no thank God I'm not racing party. He said he's saving that for Kona. So those were really the only other like vibe things that were off, and most people probably wouldn't have noticed that. But I did partake in the beer mile, and I'll partake in that again. But underpants run, I'll just I'll spectate. So
Yeah, I've never done that. I don't think I ever will. I don't think anyone ever wants to watch me run around in my skivvies. So I'll
How
save
was your beer
everybody.
mile time, Brad?
well, it was kind of unofficially a beer mile because there was not a lot of rules of the beer mile
Yeah,
being
yeah,
followed.
it's very unorganized for
So
Joe, which makes it great.
yeah, they had straws in their bottles. They had bottles instead of cans. There was 4% beer, which I didn't know 4% beer was a thing. There was that. There was, yeah. So at that point, I found out about the beer mile about 20 minutes from the start. Had just
That's when
come from
Joe
the,
Skipper decided to do it, probably too.
now there was a big crowd. There was more people watching than doing it. And I had ate up at the award ceremony, and I didn't eat like I was going to do a beer mile. I ate like I was eating lunch and hadn't eaten in a day and a half of spectating. So,
Did you
um,
did you see how he announced where the location of the beer model was going to be?
no, I
He
missed
was
that.
he was on FaceTime with his wife, and so his wife's like face is in the upper corner of the phone, and he's like, oh, hold on, I gotta, and so he like takes a picture, like he change, and then he screenshots it, and then so then he puts that out there. I'm like, this is where the beer mile is gonna be. So like his wife's trying to like talk to him. He's like, hold on, this is where I'm gonna
That's
do
awesome.
it.
It was a good spot.
It was
It was a
such a
good spot.
Skipper moment, man. I
So yeah,
love the
after
guy.
2 beers, Ryan, I didn't pull the plug, but I really went after it after that. So I had the first beer went down pretty good, and then I ran some guys down, and then I was out of breath for the second beer because I'm out of shape. And so the second beer was a slow beer. And then coming back in, I really didn't want to drink 2 more beers. So I just opened my mouth and just poured them from way up high and just let it waterfall out of my mouth, and then just kept running, did 2 laps like that. So if anybody has any video or pictures of that, I have yet to see them, but that's why I was doing it because I wanted one good photo of the best beer mile ever. So I'm gonna come prepared for the Kona beer mile though, and if I can crack like 8 minutes, I'd be happy. I mean, Will Clark is still showing up and dominating beer miles, so um, yeah, I don't know what he ran, but he lapped most of the field. Joe was on the verge of getting lapped if I'm not mistaken. So
Did he
um,
show up in a special outfit?
Will Clark?
No, Joe.
Was he wearing his
No,
jorts? I hope so.
I don't know. I don't think he was in shorts. I don't think he was wearing a shirt. No, he's in spandex, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
He
in
had like
spandex
this.
shorts.
He had this like legit, authentic. What was the outfit that they wear in Roth, Germany? It was like a
Oh
Lederhosen.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
It's it was like real leather and everything. That's what
yeah.
he
Luckily, we
got.
didn't have to climb up any playgrounds and go down any slides on this course because I think that's what happened in
Mhm.
Roth, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how he lost. Actually, he was in the
Yeah.
lead until it was the playground type, and then yeah, he just couldn't do it, man. his buddy, his buddy got up the stairs way faster than Joe did, and then Joe tried to cut the course, and yeah, so DQ'd, man. Well, I will say this about from an outsider looking and not being in these. I thought it was Iron Man's best broadcast that they've ever done. I was super impressed with the, even though I didn't watch the whole thing, the pre-show. While it was a little bit too long, in my opinion, it was really nice to have a lot of the background information being told before the race started. I thought the graphics for the run, bike, and swim courses were really cool. I thoroughly, even though they're not 100% dialed in, we talked about this last week. I love the stuff that BCC is doing with some of the side graphics with the information of like, power, GPS, things like that. Apparently, most of the GPS stuff didn't work properly in these, so they've still got to like figure that out for Kona. But I
Is
like how they had like, the little informational tags on the riders in the swim, so that when they were talking about a particular swimmer, they had like their name pop up
Yeah.
with the swimmer, so you could kind of see what was going on there. I just think they did an exceptionally good job with the whole production. I was really impressed with it. And the
do you
and
know
and the camera guy that was on the one wheel needs to be the one that actually like wins an Emmy in the future, because that dude is super super talented.
No, I mean that was probably one of the more shocking revelations was watching that guy on the one wheel the
I
entire
think
time.
even I want to say James Mitchell was also on a one wheel
They
as
looked
well.
great. Like
Yeah, they did
and
a really good job.
and I think that's potentially one of the ways that, you know, as we're talking about, because, you know, in my article on it, right, like one of the drawbacks was, again, we didn't have enough cameras on the run course to be able to see, like we never saw Patrick Longa until he was pretty much passing Rudy von Berg.
Well, they pulled motos from the guys. So
Well,
right at the last minute, they all got there and they were supposed to have motos for it, and the crowds were just way too big, and so they gave everybody e-bikes and said sorry. But I mean, it was the right call to make, but that
right.
probably
And so
strung home a
when we're
lot.
talking about that creative solutioning of how do we get more cameras out on course, like those one wheels looked, if you can pilot one, which is a big if, obviously. Um, but that's a potential solution. I love the e-bike um, side of the equation.
I mean, on a four loop course, you can have some stationary cameras as well, which
That
I
too.
may have missed not seeing those, but
They didn't
there
exist.
was, yeah,
No, they
there
didn't.
was there was a
No,
lot of
there needs to be a
media
big
out there.
crane and arms and stuff like that doing that.
Yeah.
Um, but
On the
like
subject of, sorry, of BCC, what do you know anything about that, Eric? Do you know about that technology they're using, or is it cell service, or?
So they're actually they were trying to get permission to share that with us before Nice. They're going to share it with us before Kona. So we're actually going to have a couple of articles written up about the stuff that they're doing.
So we've all been around long enough. So maybe you guys remember the cork collector. Do you guys remember that device?
yes,
No.
I'm
it
getting
was
blank stares.
it's basically like take a race ranger type of thing, except it would broadcast athlete data out back.
Yeah, it was. I used it for the first race we ever used it, and it was a really good race that it happened to be used at because it connected to your devices and they set it up with your A&T plus numbers in it. So they had like actual power numbers in there and stuff. I think it was just too far ahead of its time, but it was at Galveston 70.3 and I was back and probably 15th or 16th at coming into T1. And it was the five guys in like the 6th to 10th range took a wrong turn on the course and they were sitting there watching the court collector dots like run around the course and they saw these five guys take a wrong turn and they had to go chase them down on the course to let them know that they were either needed to go back or were DQ'd. And so it actually worked like in live time. And it was interesting that the first time they used it, five guys just happened to make a wrong turn.
Yeah, apparently some of obviously they were dealing with some massive, and Brad, you experienced this too. Like the cell phone service wasn't great in Nice, particularly when you got up into those mountains and stuff. And then the limitations on the GPS systems that they used weren't they didn't tell them that they had those limitations until they were delivered to them.
Right.
And so it was like one of those like, oh, well, thanks. We could have not done this if we would have known. But
Yeah, I mean, I meant to tell you that it wasn't the cell towers there. It was actually my cell phone. So when you see a new iPhone 15, I think what 2 days for pre-order. When you see that on my expense sheet, that's why, because I need to have good cell phone service. So that's the excuse for the write-off, right?
okay, yeah, let's talk about that. You didn't have 5G, huh?
No, no, I was on LTE, and
Oh yeah, that's the problem.
I have T-Mobile global roaming. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Wi-Fi was really good though. So
There you
yeah,
go. Well, thanks for joining us, Brad. We appreciate it. I'm sure listeners appreciated having somebody else on the podcast besides Ryan and I just ramble about stuff as well. So
yeah. So back to your original question, I get to Kona October 5th. So be there 4 or 5 days ahead of you guys, I think. Or you if I think Ryan's gonna come too, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.